It's the start of a new year, 2025, and my friends, we have a big year ahead of us. However, we're still in what I consider the mourning period of my favorite season of the year, haunt season. I miss it, I'm sure you miss it too. However, I think now provides the ultimate opportunity to look forward instead of backwards and start discussing what we want to see and think we'll see at this year's Halloween Horror Nights. January is my birthday month, so I put together a wish list of IPs, original houses, and event offerings I want to see or think we'll see at HHN 2025. Now before we get into anything, I want to clarify that this year's event is a blank canvas. We are in January, we know nothing about it. So don't take anything I'm about to say here as fact because I'm purely sharing my own wants for this year's event. Plus, this is the time when anything is on the table and it makes it even more exciting, so let's just have fun with this video. I love making videos around this time of year, I know you all love watching them, and it's kind of a tradition on this channel, so before we get into any of my wants, I want you to let me know down in the comments below, what do you want to see at HHN 2025? Like I said before, I have quite a few items to discuss, so I don't want to waste any more time with this. Let's just jump right into it and talk about what I would like to see at Halloween Horror Nights 2025. Now perhaps the biggest thing at any given Halloween Horror Nights event are the IPs. They draw people in, they're usually some of the busiest houses of any given event, and as was the case with last year's event, they can be some of the best. We all dream about the horror media that we love getting a haunted house at Halloween Horror Nights. So here are some of the IPs that I particularly would love to see at this year's event. Starting off, let's talk about one of the biggest spooky sequels of 2024. Beetlejuice. Now Beetlejuice and Halloween Horror Nights go way back. He was there at the original Fright Nights event in 1991, and most recently he had a haunted house at Halloween Horror Nights 30 in 2021. Beetlejuice, while not the scariest, is one of the most iconic horror adjacent characters out there. This is especially true with the release of Beetlejuice last year. A movie that wasn't perfect, but had the makings of a great Halloween Horror Nights haunted house. Whether it's all the funky characters and locations within the afterlife, the stuff calling back to the original film, or some of those really amazing practical effects and monsters, they really have a lot to work with if they wanted to bring Beetlejuice to the event. And we saw with Ghostbusters Frozen Empire last year how they were able to bring not only a horror comedy to Halloween Horror Nights, but a really special effects heavy adaptation of a legacy sequel, paying tribute to the entire series within it. I think if Beetlejuice got the same treatment as Ghostbusters Frozen Empire did, bringing some of the best scenes from that movie to life while maybe throwing in some nods to the original, we could have a really fun comedy house on our hands. Now moving from the lighter comedic tone of Beetlejuice, we go to the darker side of 2024 horror releases. A film that came out not too long ago, but really has captured the attention of many horror fans. I'm of course talking about Robert Eggers' remake of Nosferatu. I absolutely adored this film when I saw it in theaters, and I really loved the tone that Robert Eggers brought forward in his adaptation of Nosferatu. For one, I think it does the vampire thing a little differently than what we've seen in the past with the Universal Classic Monsters. Don't get me wrong, I do love the classic monsters, and I love when they appear at Halloween Horror Nights, but we are getting Dark Universe coming later on this year, so I think it would be okay if we try another style of vampire at the event. I think they could really nail the period aspect of this film because they do a lot of great period haunted houses that carry a sense of dread. I'm thinking of something like Blood Moon Dark Offerings. Kind of carries that heavy feel that you get while watching Nosferatu. And I think this is a house that can genuinely be scary. We saw with Insidious the Further last year that Horror Nights isn't afraid to make a haunted house that genuinely scares people. And while Nosferatu wasn't a jump scare heavy movie like Insidious is, I think it's dark enough and serious enough that it could work in a haunted house at Halloween Horror Nights. When talking about 2024 movie releases, it's pretty difficult to ignore what I think is maybe the biggest horror release of 2024, Terrifier 3, and how I think Terrifier could make its way to the event this year. I mentioned how good of an idea it would have been to bring Art the Clown to Halloween Horror Nights last year, and I mentioned in that video that I thought 2024 was the peak of his popularity, but I was proven wrong. Terrifier 3 was such a big movie this year, and in general, Terrifier has just kind of taken over the horror community. So much of the merch is present at Spirit Halloween, at Hot Topic, at Spencer's. His face is pretty much everywhere, and he's almost the face of a new horror movement for the 2020s. So I didn't think Art the Clown and Terrifier appearing at Halloween Horror Nights was an if, but more of a when. We have so many unique costumes, unique set pieces, unique kills that they could bring to life. It's gory, but it's also bold in a way that I think Horror Nights could use to their advantage, and that boldness is really why it appears on my wish list. I'm not a huge fan of the Terrifier movies. They're just not really my thing when it comes to horror, but I really would love to see this at Halloween Horror Nights because it is so different. It is a slasher, but it's a new type of slasher. It's not Michael Myers, it's not Leatherface, it's not Chucky, it's not someone we've seen many times at the event before. It's an all new face, and I'm always here for when Horror Nights does things with new and relevant IP that they've never done before. Okay, let's move away from those 2024 releases and let's actually go back to a movie that's celebrating a pretty prominent anniversary this year. One of my favorite films of all time, not just horror movies, just movies in general. I'm talking about Jaws. Jaws was originally released in 1975, and the film celebrates its 50th anniversary this year, so why not give it a house at Halloween Horror Nights to celebrate that anniversary? Now, while Jaws isn't specifically a horror movie, it is horror adjacent, and they've done things like Ghostbusters and, as I mentioned, Beetlejuice, so I don't think it's too out of the realm of possibility for them to execute this. You have the suspense of a big scary shark that's eating people, and you have quite a surprising amount of gore for a PG rated film even back in 1975. Now I say this as if the questions of logistics surrounding a Jaws house didn't run through my mind every time I brought up the idea. How would they even execute a house like this with this IP? As much as I wanted it because I love the movie so much, I didn't think it was at all possible. Until last year. A Quiet Place used tons of puppets and large-scale animatronics to create the scale of the monsters. And most obviously, we saw a giant shark puppet in Slaughter Cinema 2. I think with the direction Universal is going, utilizing their nostalgic properties in different ways, that Jaws could work in the year 2025, and I think it would be a perfect time to do so. We of course have the 50th anniversary of Jaws this year, but we also have the 35th anniversary of Universal Studios Florida this year, and of course Jaws was one of the main attractions of the park in its opening years, so I think now would be a really good time to do it because of anniversaries and all that stuff. Either way, even if it doesn't happen this year, I would love to see a Jaws house sometime in the future. I'm a huge Jaws fan, and I would love to see that movie translated into a Halloween Horror Nights style walkthrough experience. I think it would be really cool. Now, the final IP I want to talk about is a very personal pick to me. It's one of my favorite franchises in any sort of media, and how this franchise was treated in 2024 made me even more hopeful and curious to see if it could and might get a haunted house at Halloween Horror Nights. I'm of course talking about the video game series Fallout. We saw video games previously with The Last of Us back in 2023, which was a huge deal. And with Fallout getting a fantastic TV series in 2024, I think there's a lot they could pull from in a haunted house. I would love to explore the vaults, explore the wastelands, see the ghouls, maybe encounter some raiders or the Brotherhood of Steel. Fallout has been a big part of my life for over a decade. I've loved the video game series. It was one of the first video game series that actually got me into video games. So with the TV show being a big success and the video game series just being very big in pop culture, I could see Fallout really working at Halloween Horror Nights. It's not necessarily a horror game, but there are quite a few scary scenarios and scary moments in Fallout that can make for fun scenes in a haunted house. Now, when it comes to original houses at Halloween Horror Nights, it's a bit trickier. It's a little harder to pinpoint what exactly they might tackle when it comes to original content in any given event year. But I did briefly mention Slaughter Cinema before, and I think because we got Slaughter Cinema 2 last year, we're going to see some sort of Slaughter Cinema spinoff coming for HHN 34. Slaughter Cinema, while a fun anthology concept on its own, is typically used to test the waters for certain concepts when it comes to future original haunted houses or scare zones coming to the event. The last time we saw Slaughter Cinema back in 2018, it was immediately followed with Yeti Terror of the Yukon, which is a direct response to the Attack of the Swamp Yeti section of that original Slaughter Cinema house. So as we were going through Slaughter Cinema 2, I was taking notes inside my head, kind of bouncing back and forth of what movies I think could make really cool haunted houses coming out of Slaughter Cinema 2. For one, either of the holiday themed movies, whether that's Mardi Gras Murders or Killer Kringles, could make a fun haunted house. I've advocated for a Christmas themed haunted house in the past, but I wouldn't mind seeing a Mardi Gras themed haunted house. Yes, they've done stuff based in Louisiana, but specifically tackling the celebration of Mardi Gras, it's something they haven't done in quite a while. And in general, Killer Kringles was just a fun concept. I wanted to see Slaughter Cinema tackle Christmas movies for a while, and it was great wish fulfillment. Another movie I really enjoyed coming out of Slaughter Cinema 2 was Heavy Metal Hell 3D. This one got a lot of the marketing push for last year's event. We saw a lot of that Mohawk skull punk guy on the merch. He was at the HHN bar. He was just kind of a present character at Halloween Horror Nights 33, and Heavy Metal Hell 3D was kind of like the marquee movie. It was the movie they announced the house with. I think Heavy Metal Hell has potential, but the movie that I loved most coming out of Slaughter Cinema 2 was Hatchet and Chains Demon and Bounty Hunters. This scene was so wonderful. You had a great triple scare, it had a great smell, it had a great setting and tone, and I think that would suit Horror Nights pretty well if they were to go for that gunslinging cowboy style of Western in a haunted house. So I'm going to be the biggest advocate for Hatchet and Chains, but I think any of these 4, or really any of the 8 movies featured in Slaughter Cinema 2 could make a good spin-off haunted house. Now, something that Halloween Horror Nights has been doing recently is reintroducing the idea of icons. Of course, icons were super popular back in the 2000s with Jack, the Caretaker, Eddie, Storyteller, all of them. But they kind of didn't do icons for a while until HHN 30 when they brought Jack back, and then they followed it with icons year after year. I think this year we are going to see a new icon of some sort. Maybe it'll be a character from the past we are getting reintroduced to, like how we did with Dr. Oddfellow, or it'll be a completely new character, like what we saw with Sinister and Surreal. And I think with an icon, we will get a new icon house of some sort. Obviously, I can't predict what that icon house would look like, but I think if we do see an icon, we will see some sort of icon house. I think that's the biggest thing that was missing with Sinister and Surreal. I love the characters, I love the design. I was very curious as to where they came from, and I wish we got to explore that in a haunted house. Maybe even like a dual path haunted house that allowed you to choose a side, Sinister or Surreal. And that's just something I'm hoping to see with this year's event, that yes, we see another icon, but also another icon house. Now, moving away from houses specifically, I want to talk about a few event offerings that we either haven't seen in a while, or things that I would just like to see at this year's event in general, improvements on what maybe didn't work so well last year. And at the top of that list, I want to see the Lagoon Show come back to Halloween Horror Nights. From 2019 to 2022, the Lagoon Show at Halloween Horror Nights, whether it was Marathon of Mayhem or Ghoulish Halloween Tale, was one of the coolest offerings they had at the event. It was a second show for people who maybe didn't want to go see Nightmare Fuel, and did a good job of tying in the theme, tying in the overall aesthetics or some of the IPs or originals we saw at the event that year. Those shows were great people eaters, but they also added to the ambiance of an event. When you were going by the Lagoon Show, you knew that Lagoon Show was happening. It was kind of like a big montage of some of the best music moments, some of the best visuals, and the really cool stuff they could do with projections and water effects. And considering we got that exact thing with Cinesational last year, adding in the additional drone element, which is incredible, I really hope we see something return to the Lagoon at Halloween Horror Nights this year. Now let's talk scare zones. I love the scare zones at Halloween Horror Nights. My first year, Halloween Horror Nights 31, was really made by those phenomenal scare zones that brought such a great ambiance to the area, brought scares, brought fun little moments with the scare actors. Great scare zones can really elevate elevate a Halloween Horror Nights event. And the one scare zone that I felt was really lacking last year was Duality of Fear, the front of park scare zone. So with that being said, what I really want to see for HHN 34 is a more developed entrance scare zone. The entrance scare zone is supposed to welcome you into Halloween Horror Nights. It's supposed to introduce maybe the icons of the event or just the general feel of what Halloween Horror Nights is for that year. And I think Duality of Fear had the icons there, and I really liked what they did with Sinister and Surreal, having them up there every so often, greeting guests and talking to guests. But I felt like other than that, there weren't many props, and it was just a chainsaw horde in the zone. Nothing on the chainsaws, y'all were doing great with what you had, there just wasn't much to play off of in Duality of Fear. So I hope they really go back and look at this entrance zone and look at what it could be. Go back to 2019 and N-Arcade. Look at what they did with that zone, the set pieces, the lighting, the music, the costumes. And obviously that area in Minionland isn't really used anymore, but even look at what they did back in 2023 with Dr. Oddfellow's collection of horrors. You had the icon, yes, but you also had different characters from other scare zones in the park. It's introducing you to Oddfellow, who did control all the scare zones for that year. Plus, we had a really great carriage set piece that acted as a phenomenal stage for Oddfellow to do his shows up close and personal. I would just like to see more with the scare zone this year, and I would like for the introduction to Halloween Horror Nights 34 to not just be the neon sign. Even though I love the neon sign, I would like to see more than just that neon sign this year. And finally, we have the big picture when it comes to Halloween Horror Nights 34. What I want to see more than anything else, more than any of the IPs, more than any of the originals, more than any of the other offerings that I talked about, I want to see a unified theme at Halloween Horror Nights 34. I would love to see, from the merch, to the food, to the haunted houses, to the scare zones, to the shows, a consistent theme, a consistent idea present to connect everything together. Don't get me wrong, a Halloween Horror Nights event doesn't need to have this. There have been great Halloween Horror Nights events that didn't have a full-on theme. But some of the best events in recent memory have had an aesthetic, or an idea, or a character that connects all the offerings together. It's something we look back on and we remember that theme, we remember that vibe, that aesthetic, and that's why we go to Halloween Horror Nights. We go for the aesthetic, for the feel that is being at Halloween Horror Nights. Whether it's a decade, a design aesthetic, or the complete story of a new icon, a unified theme really takes a Halloween Horror Nights year from good to great, and I really want a great Halloween Horror Nights year with HHN 34. But those are just my wants for Halloween Horror Nights 34. I want you to let me know down in the comments below, what do you want to see at Halloween Horror Nights 34 or Halloween Horror Nights 2025 if you're in Hollywood? We're still in that blank canvas period of Halloween Horror Nights where we don't know really anything about the event in particular. Based on this tweet from Mike Aiello that just dropped today as I'm recording this, we know that construction has started on the event, so they are working on it. We are getting closer to some announcements, to some information about this year's event, but we have nothing yet. This is just my wish list and my bold predictions. All of this could happen, it would be really awesome, or none of it could happen. So go crazy in the comments. Let me know what you would love to see, whether it's plausible or not. I of course want to thank you for watching this video and thank you for your patience with the videos. I know there hasn't been a lot of action happening on this channel. More videos are to come in 2025, not just about Halloween Horror Nights, but about Universal at large. We are getting Epic Universe this year. That's pretty big. Horror Unleashed in Las Vegas is opening later on this year. My favorite theme park in the world, Universal Studios Florida, is turning 35 this year, which is a big anniversary. We also have Mardi Gras and the summer season and a bunch more stuff coming up. So much stuff is coming your way as it pertains to Universal videos in 2025. I'm very excited to talk about it with you all. But until then, if you like this video and want to see more like it about Halloween Horror Nights and Universal, be sure to let me know by leaving a like and subscribing to the channel. It lets me know you like videos like these and you want me to make more of them. I once again want to thank you for watching this video. I will of course see you in the next one, but until then, stay spooky and take care everybody.